Hey guys, and we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to Whiskey Charlie, the War Game Chat live show every month on YouTube. I'm Mo from Mo's Game Table, and joining me tonight are my co-hosts, or is my co-host, I should say. The other one's not here yet. Gimpy will be on the way here, but Dan the Man Pancaldi from No Enemies Here Wargaming News is here with me, and we have a special guest tonight, David Thompson, the designer of Pavlov's House, Castellator, Undaunted Normandy, among others, and his latest game, by Stealth and Sea, which is on Kickstarter right now with Dan Verson Games. Welcome to the show, David.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Dave.
And Dan. So everything looks pretty good so far. Last I checked, we're nearing the halfway point for the funding on the Kickstarter, and that's got to be pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, it's always, this is the fourth game with DVG, and every single time, when it goes live, you're just like, oh, will anybody show up to the Kickstarter?
Yeah. It went live today, is that right?
Yeah, yep, a few hours ago.
And it's what? It's going to be funded in a couple of hours, I think.
Hey, that'd be great. You get past the funding goal and just start hitting stretch goals for people.
And there you go. That's what we want to see. We want to see everybody that's going to be in the chat tonight that can join us. You'll be able to ask David any questions, but welcome in Nate, who's a little late on Saturday.
Sorry. I had to get the 3-year-old away from the office. She was very much focused on daddy right now, so I was trying to keep her away so you guys wouldn't have screaming in the background.
I could bring my kids down and we could just let the kids go at it.
Have a little scream off.
She's going through a little phase. She's a little loud right now.
Really?
Yeah.
She's finding her voice.
She's kind of like the wife. She's either always really happy or mad. Kind of leans towards mad. Hey, David, good to see you, by the way.
You too, bud. You too.
I just finished up with your thing today, your game, last video. I think you saw that went up just a few hours ago.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
No, it was great. I had fun playing the game. Like I said in the video, I hadn't known much about that part of history, so that kind of opened my eyes to stuff that I didn't know. And I hate it because I don't have a whole lot of time to have a lot of practice with a game before I film it, so I practice as much as I can. And the thing is that by the end of the playthrough, I'll come up with better strategies, and I'm kind of thinking to myself afterwards, I'm like, damn, that was stupid. Why'd I do this? Throughout the game, I'm like, so I always try to tell people, don't look at me for strategy.
Yeah.
I'm showing you the game. I'm not showing you the best way how to play the game. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't the Brits have like X sub or something?
So the Brits have what they called them. Their version of it was called the Chariot, but it was inspired by the success of the Italians. So when the Italians did the super successful mission in Alexandria, I think the British were like, okay, we need to copy this. And so they worked together for a short period too after the armistice. The Italians who joined the Allies worked with the British. The most surreal one was some of the Italian operators working with the British to attack the former headquarters of the Italian Navy, that port, La Spezia.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again. The Italians were attacking their own port?
So it was there. So it was after the armistice, the Italian operators who switched over to the Allies working with the British to attack targets in La Spezia, which was where they were headquartered out of prior to the armistice. So
that's kind of messed up.
I know. Yeah.
Their own home.
Yep.
What was
they didn't have
inspiration?
GPS. So yeah, that's a good question from Ken. What was your inspiration for creating By Stealth and Sea?
Yeah. So the story, I won't go into like all the super gory details early on because it kind of came about in a weird roundabout way, but it kind of like all of the other games that you guys have seen, Pavlov's House and Castellator, it'll be like I'll read about it or I hear about it or whatever, and it just is like a spark of inspiration, and then I just dive into it. And usually I do about a year of research before I start doing the design. So just reading all about it. So yeah, I just heard about, hey, just like you guys, when you heard about it for the first time, like, what? Guys riding torpedoes? That's not true. and you start reading about, oh my gosh, this is real, and it's pretty awesome, as far as combination of courage and skill.
Yeah,
I bet you it came about because some guys were sitting around World War II thinking, Navy stuff, and they're talking about torpedoes. Like, I bet you I could ride one of those things in and destroy shit. Like, bet you couldn't. Oh,
it started off as an 8-second thing, and then it went a little longer.
The original concept came out of World War I, where they had come up with the idea, but they didn't have enough time to operationalize it before the war was over. And then it just kind of, during the interwar period, it fell by the wayside. And so they resurrected it as they were going into World War II.
Well, war is always, going to necessitate technology advances and stuff. I mean, when you think about it, people don't realize that submarine warfare has been around since, forever. I mean, not forever, but we had the Turtle was the first one, I believe, that the United States had in the Revolution. And then the Hunley obviously was popular, or not popular, was made popular by the movie and some books and stuff in the Civil War. And then World War I, it became more of a thing. And then World War II, it was a big thing. It was huge. And now it's even bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
The rebels had a sub during the Revolution.
The rebels had a sub. Yes, the Turtle. During the Revolution. Yeah, it was a wood. Basically, it was like a big barrel. And a guy in there basically pedaled his way over there. And the whole idea was to go there and take a screw and screw a charge or screw up a charge into the side of the ship, pull away, pull a string, and have it blow up. So
wow, that's pretty cool.
Similar to what the Hunley did. It's kind of similar to that because you didn't have propulsion for torpedoes at that point. So they had to, kind of hook on with a spar or something, put a device on it, and then pull away. And then you came up with propulsion systems for torpedoes, which we all know, if you played the Hunters or any of those games, was not very good in World War II, especially at first. There's a lot of duds, and then it got better and better. And then obviously now with nuclear submarines, they're even better now. Way better, much more scary.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking that's the original kamikaze, pedaling your way in with explosives.
Well, that was the Kitons.
Yeah, the Japanese
Kitons. They literally would get inside of a torpedo, and it was specially modified. Yes, they would steer it into a ship.
By Stealth and Sea Part 2.
Well, it was really just a Part 1 for those guys. It was a little different for them, but it
eliminates the whole scuttle and
that's true. Yeah, 2 phases of the game, or it's the streamlined version of the game. Yeah,
yeah, you just have to get yourself out.
It's a deck of 18 cards. You're good.
I was showing that off when I was playing the game, and I was like, that really dawned on me when I was to that segment of the game. I'm like, damn, because all it takes is that one bad harbor defense card to pop up and have one of those patrol ships show up, and then boom, you're getting multiple negative modifiers, and those guys are more than likely getting captured.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously putting the actual guys on the cards, right? You already start to kind of build this sort of like, I really don't want this guy to get killed or caught or whatever. But then when you go to the campaign and you actually literally need the guy to not get caught, it's like you do not, you start to treat them differently. And I think was it you, Nate, that was playing and asked you if it was either you or Grant with the player's aid. I was like, hey, would you have made a different decision if you were playing the campaign versus a one-off game, right? And
no, that was Grant.
Was it Grant? Okay. Yeah, because you start to think very differently about what the things you're willing to do in the game, right?
Yeah, like in my game, SLC 3 just kept having bad stuff happen to it. All the faults kept just landing on SLC 3. It had a couple of patrol ships that were following it for some reason. They just couldn't catch a break. And I would have made different decisions if I had to worry about that, because I wouldn't want to lose that crew's bonus, right? Because I think they were the one that had the stamina bonus or one of those. I wouldn't want to lose that and have a worse crew later on, so I might have made different decisions to try to preserve that crew. Instead, since I knew I was playing a one-off game, I was kind of like sacrificial lambs. Go kill those guys, so my others can make their way in and succeed,
Yep.
Well, that's the thing, you have to make those types of decisions. It's great to put the a gamer in the, that kind of the position of the campaign commander, where you have to send guys to their deaths, and it's good to have that
perspective.
the names, so you have that perspective. Exactly. You have a sense of ownership and connection with the characters, because otherwise just a piece of cardboard, you don't care.
Yeah,
you're like, hey,
exactly.
good eye. You want to get that visceral connection to the history.
Yeah, you're right. David, I gotta ask, because I'm either a dummy or I lost at one. Is there a 1 in this deck?
No, because it's so there's really there could have been, but what that deck represents is the 2d6 dice distribution roll. So since you can't roll a 1 on a 2d6, that's why there's 1 12 and 1 2, but 6 7s, right? It's the exact duplication of a 2d6 dice roll.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, I really like that, because I like it when someone does cards like this, kind of replacing the dice.
Yeah.
Because you can't adjust the dice during right? There's no changing that. And I actually gave a comparison to another game I really liked to yours, the Arkham Horror card game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you played that one?
Yep.
And they have the similar system where they use, for those of you who haven't played it, they have tokens instead of cards. And you can draw from a bag, and depending on how hard you want your game, depends on what tokens you put in the bag. So you have harder tokens for a harder game, easier tokens for easier game, obviously. Well, that's what I liked about this game so much, was the fact that the dice, the cards, change over the course of your campaign or your game, and the more successful you are, or with this, the more you draw the 12, the harder it's going to get. And that kind of symbolizes that realism that as you proceed and you're doing bad things to them, they're going to heighten their awareness and be more aware, and you're more likely to get caught. I like it when designers put stuff like this into a game, because there's only so much you can do with dice.
Yeah.
No matter how many sides you have on it or how many dice you include, you're always going to have a limited option. But when you have cards or you have tokens, you can change that up depending on situation. So really good call on this for the game.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of, I had a couple of design goals going in that I really wanted to achieve. One is if you played Castle Litter or Paula's House or whatever, I do some things with the tactics cards that adjusts variance in certain ways, but at the end of the day, you're still rolling dice, right? So it's possible that you have a crazy aberrant game. And I wanted, on the player choice side, I wanted to have that tension between rolling dice with the action points versus the certainty you have when you spend 2 action points to take an action, right?
Yep.
So the player choice side, I wanted that. And then I wanted to constrain the amount of variance on the alert deck. And so originally it was dice, and I just wasn't happy with it. I could never achieve a result that it had a wide range of results, but the variance from game to game was somewhat constrained, which the cards allow you to do.
No, I 100% agree with you. Those were the 2 things that I pointed out in my playthrough, was the 2 actions. Are there any operator cards that have 3 on them?
No,
I didn't see any.
No.
All right, so 2 for standard, and then 1 if they're stunned.
Yeah.
So you have that constraint, and that's the choice I find myself making so often, was, do I want to guarantee the success for one thing, or do I want to take the chance for 2 things?
Yeah.
That and the card variance between the alert deck was the big things that really stuck out to the game. The card variance was just, a design choice that I think improves the game. But the choices, when it comes down to either guarantee success or potential success, but you can get farther or do more, I've really liked that choice when it comes to it, because that puts so much choice back into the player's hands.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm rambling on. I played it today or yesterday, so of course I got it stuck in my head.
You're the one here in the group who's played, so definitely talk about your experiences, so that way anybody who's joining in that is considering backing the game is going to hear from the horse's mouth right here.
Well, I'm kind of a fanboy over here, because I've played, I think, everything that he's got. Wait, no, I haven't played War Chest. I think War Chest is the only thing of yours that I haven't played. But I've played everything else and really liked it. For What Remains is actually my favorite.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, dude. Thank you. That's cool.
It's so close. I love miniatures games, my little guilty pleasure, right?
Yeah.
And For What Remains is kind of like a miniatures game shrunk down into a war game.
Yeah.
Hex and counter type war game. And it plays so well with the way the counters stack with each other to improve their stats, or you can buy a better unit or have less less good but more quantity units. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I really, really like that system.
So we may have talked about this, but that was the first game I ever designed. Like I designed that game before I got into gaming.
Really?
So I started on So that game had been in work for probably 12 years.
Oh, no kidding. I can see it.
Yeah.
I love the system. Who did the fluff on it?
I did. Yeah.
You did the fluff too?
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Like yours is one of the only games, and my thing's dynamite. One of the only games that I've actually picked up the fluff, liked it enough that I actually read all the way through, and then at the end of it, I'm like, okay, what happens? I want to know, like, where do we go from here? You can't leave me hanging. You got to fill this out. Like, it was actually an interesting story, and I recommended it when I was doing the playthrough. I can't remember if that was the one. I think I had my new equipment then. I had felt so bad when I did Castle Eider because I did that one right after I moved.
Yeah.
And my computer had been broken. So much of my equipment got damaged in the move, and I had to kind of slap together the Castle Eider so it wasn't the usual quality I had. But I knew you guys were going to Kickstarter soon, so I tried to do it as best as I could with the equipment that I still had available. Yeah. So I didn't want you to be upset because it wasn't the usual.
No, man, no. That stuff doesn't bother me. I don't know if other people care about that kind of stuff, but I've seen and watched so many videos with good or bad or whatever, and honestly, that's important. But I mean, really, it's the content creator, like how they present themselves, is for me the most important when I'm watching a video.
Well, it's kind of like, I'm assuming you've designed other games, maybe games that you haven't published, but you might go back and look at some of your original work, right?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that you might not have published, and you look at it now and you go, man, that's garbage. What was I thinking? That's not good. I do the same thing with some of my first videos.
Yeah.
Yep. And I look at Castle Eider and I'm like, damn, I hate that. That was so bad.
Well, we have a question here from Custer61 who says, with social media, it's never been easier to play a living opponent. But now in this age, we have an avalanche of solitaire games. Why now?
So first of all, one thing to speak to that is, so when I'm not designing solitaire games, when I'm designing like War Chest or Undaunted or whatever, I have one primary design partner. His name is Trevor Benjamin, and he's a Canadian, but he lives in the UK. And we met when I lived in the UK. And so we meet twice weekly on Skype and Tabletop Simulator to do all of our design work. So to your point, I mean, I could jump on Tabletop Simulator anytime and play just about anything, right? I really, 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 really enjoy designing solitaire games more than I enjoy playing them. And I don't know why. I think there's an interesting challenge in the design where, how do you say this? You get to tell a story to a person where they get to be like the protagonist in the story, and there's a historical piece to that, and there's also the design challenge of coming up with like, how is this game going to tell this story to the player who's taken on the role of the protagonist? And so there's the tying the history into it, and also the design challenge of that. So that's my perspective from the designer side.
And then from a gamer side, James Daly adds, because I can play a game of Castle Eider after work. I don't have to coordinate schedules. I can have a great game experience, but I'm not staring at a screen. So that is a very good point. From the solitaire game aspect, you can just throw the game down on the table anytime you want. Well, depending on the game. Obviously, you're not going to sit down and play like, Empire of the Sun in 30 minutes or something, but you play a game like Castle Eider, you can knock it out in 90 minutes or so. Warfighter, any of those games, you can knock out pretty quick. So you throw that down, you play, and you don't have to worry about getting an opponent to play against you. You can just play against yourself. And the important thing there is the narrative has to be really good.
Yeah. And for a guy like me who has no opponents to play with around,
no friends.
I appreciate solitaire games. What did you say?
I said no friends.
I'm your friend, Dan.
We're your friend, Dan. Everybody give Dan some love.
Nate, I wanted to ask you, how long does a session last? My God, not a campaign, but how long does it last in by Stealth and Sea?
Oh, just a one-off game?
A mission, yeah, my mission. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'd be guesstimating because it's hard for me to say right now because my single session, my one full playthrough has been on camera.
Right.
The rest has been trying out just sections of the game. But I would guess if you were focused and you weren't worrying about filming, that you could probably crack it out in under an hour.
Now, David, is that something that you planned for?
Well, yeah. So so first of all, don't let me forget your question. I want to say hi to Pete, because Pete is on and said hi, and so I know Pete, and he's an awesome guy. But also, don't let me forget, before we end tonight, we have to talk about Wargamers Insurgency at Gen Con, okay? So I would be, Harold Buchanan I would be in trouble if I didn't. Okay, so to answer your question, first of all, I don't like playing long games, right? The max for me usually is about an hour and a half, unless it's something like one of my favorites, right? That's fine. I can go like, 2.5, 3 hours max. So I'm not going to design a game that takes a long time to play, because I've probably played by Stealth and Sea about 5,000 times now. And so, I'm joking, but a lot, right? And so it has to be something that plays pretty quickly. So once you learn it, you can play an individual mission in about 30 minutes, right? Now, here's what I think is really cool about that. So you could actually play, there's 9 missions in a campaign. You could actually, if you have the time, sit down and play through an entire campaign in a single sitting, right? If you're willing to allocate 4 or 5 hours, you could play through the entire campaign, which I think is cool, right? Because each campaign is going to play super differently. But 30 minutes, you can get in and out, and if you know if you know how to play it. But yeah, for me, I'm never going to design a solitaire game that takes longer than about 75 minutes for me to play.
Okay.
This part here really kind of stood out for me. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but that is right there, the part that talks about the alert levels going up for the campaign. And that's part of what David's talking about, is depending on how well you do. And I really like that you included that, is that your victory points are included in that alert level. So the more victory points you get, if you go for that high-powered or high-leveled ship, you might get a lot of victory points, so it's going to help you in your end score, but that harbor defense is going to go up dramatically quicker if you're getting a lot of quick points right off the bat. So I like how that's included into the campaign. And he's right, though. It does play relatively quickly. I'm just hard to guess because I'm always filming it as I'm playing.
Yeah, yep. So real quick on the issue of the harbor defenses. So people probably will never pick up on this, but what I did was I modeled. So there's a fantastic book, and it's pretty small. It's actually right here. Operation Tadpole. So I've got 400 books on the Italian side, but this is by far the best book on the defensive Gibraltar side of it. And so this goes through all of the defensive reactions that the Royal Navy took in response to the missions. And so what I did was I correlated the actual how well the Italians did and what the British found or whatever, and then I mapped that from a victory point perspective to the way the British respond. So if you were to match the historical results, the British responses would be exactly lockstep with that. So obviously, if you do better earlier on, you're going to experience better defenses earlier. But yeah, I wanted to have the British defenses serve as an organic way to offset your advances in the campaign, right? So if you get better, they're going to just get better commensurate with that.
Now, does each mission have, does it get progressively harder, or it depends what I don't know, what target you choose? And
so it's a combination of those two things. So it definitely does get progressively harder, because minimally it will stay the same difficulty, right? But probably you're going to accomplish at least something, and you'll introduce a new alert level by the British defenses. So they'll add an underwater dive team, or they'll add shore-based mortars. And when they add that kind of thing, so literally the entrances into the inner harbor, they just started firing depth charges from mortars at the entrance to the harbor every 5 minutes, right? So it was just constant. So your ability to get into the inner harbor at that point it's almost impossible. So eventually you'll get there, and so eventually the difficulty will crank up. But I will say that Algiers, which they only attacked once, is probably the hardest map, right? And that's just because it was the hardest place to get into from just a geographic perspective. So
now,
plus,
go ahead, Nate.
Plus, there's the penalty for doing badly, because if you get your SLCs caught, your crews captured, that adds to the alert level because now they're catching these guys. So that I think thematically goes with it as well.
Right, and you lose that skilled crew.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, you won't have them anymore in the campaign. So all the skills they've built up, because Nate and I are kind of, we haven't really explained some of this. So two things will advance on your side as you get further in the campaign. If your operators penetrate the inner harbor, or if they destroy a ship, they're going to advance in a skill. And then as you get victory points, you'll advance your technology. So those are the two things you can do. Now, your technology is never going to get worse, but if your operators get caught, the guys who you spent all that time, improving their skills, you're going to lose that.
And my God, that is one of the biggest things, because having that level 1 skill is horrible because you're only rolling 1 die. So even just having a single skill at level 2 makes a huge difference in quality of life. So if you've got a couple of crews that are built up a little bit, it's required. There's no way you could do the harder missions with prototype equipment and basic crews. I mean, you have to get ungodly lucky.
Now, is there any way to train them up before sending them on a mission?
So what you can do, if you wanted to go in and say, I want to not risk anything, right? I want to have as low risk as possible. I want to get my guys skilled up. What you would do in the first mission is you wouldn't try to penetrate the inner harbor. You'd target cargo ships in the roadstead. And that way you're much less likely to get caught. And if you destroy one of those cargo ships, you would increase their skills.
Okay, because I mean, you're dealing with a very unique and special. And what's that you're holding up there?
It's just one of the green counters, one of the green ship counters.
Okay.
Because there's ones that are worth more points, but they're the ones that are inside the harbor, like David is talking about. Most of these cargo ships, which you can't see because the glare of the screen, most of them are worth like 1, maybe 2 points, but the ones inside the harbor are worth at least 3, up to 5 or 10 points, depending on which ones you get. But the highest point ships tend to be the ones farthest in the back that you have to go farthest to actually get to. Yeah. So risk or reward type system.
Well, yeah, but like you're saying, you can go with kind of like low hanging fruit and increase your your team's skills, because you're taking these guys. It's a limited commodity, the bodies with a limited commodity, the devices they're using, and you're putting them into these crazy situations where, like Nate was saying, you don't want to have that one skill. You want to skill them up. So the easiest way to do that would probably be that, at least for the first mission, take a softer target and raise their skills. That way you can go after more juicy targets later.
Yeah.
This is over here what he's talking about, where the skills are. Pilot, ops, repair, and stamina, and they all start at 1, if I get it up there. But you've got low counters that you put on there, say 2 or 3, just depending on what you've leveled up, or some pilots come with an increase in those skills. And I did find during my game that one of my pilot crews that started with 2 in their stamina, that helped. That came in handy, especially, for all those checks. Because when you're starting off, those fault checks require 5s at minimum. Most of them require 6s. So rolling more than 1 dice is almost required to have any chance of passing it.
Now, I got one question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dan, because I know he's got a question for you too. But you're talking about reading all these books. Kind of explain the design process, at least, in a narrow way, or a short way, I guess you could say. You did all this research, you read all about it. What's the process you have when it comes to reading this information, and then kind of, it all gels in your head into an idea? Do you make notes? Do you have a spreadsheet? What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I mean, for sure, both of those. For early on, I'll just find a few books on the topic and I'll read like cover to cover. But as I'm reading them, what I'll do is I'll mark up pages, or I'll take notes and say, okay, this is an event that evokes the kind of thing that I'm interested in designing the game around. So I don't necessarily concern myself with the mechanisms at that point, but I do think about, okay, I want this thing to be represented in the game, right? So that'll be usually the first few books that broadly cover the topic area. And then coming out of that, I'll start formulating, okay, this is the story I want the game to tell. And then I'll go back and think, all right, if this is the story and these are the events, how can I model those events in such a way that like the game is fun, is interesting? Because what I don't ever want to do is have a game that feels mechanical without interesting choices, right? So occasionally, very occasionally, I'll make minor choices that are for the gameplay at the expense of some historical element. Like if you look at the maps, the board maps for this game, I designed the boards based on aerial photography and maps from the time period, not modern maps. So literally every single building, and not that it matters, right? Because the building has nothing to do with it, but every single building is where the building was at the time, etc. However, there's like a couple of piers or moles that I slightly would tweak their position, right? So in everything I do, I try to make it as historically accurate as possible up until the point where it makes the game not as good. And then I'll make sacrifices for that. But yeah, I'm usually looking for like where's get the history done first. What do I want to model? And then try to reverse engineer, I guess you'd say, like the mechanics around that.
Dan?
Because you did all this this research, David, did you come across, for historical reasons, did you come across what did they use for gear? Like there weren't any rebreathers back then in terms of scuba gear. So I don't know how deep they went, but there must have been that exhaling of air.
Yep.
Which is that giveaway.
Yep. So one thing we should talk about now, that's a fantastic way to transition into my design partner, Nicola Sagini.
Sagini.
Yeah. Thank you. So, so when I first conceived this game, so I don't know if either of you guys remember, if any of you guys remember this, but I had posted probably a couple of years ago when I was first conceiving it, and I had like an early prototype, and it was only one mission, and that generated a lot of interest. Right, there was quite a few people who wanted to play test it, and then I moved, and a bunch of other projects took priority, and so it kind of sat on the shelf for a while. But when I first did that, I met Nicola, online, right? So he reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm super interested in this topic, and I've actually thought about making a game about it myself. Would you be willing to see what I've developed?" And he already had an interest in the topic and had all sorts of research where the tech tree that we have in the game now, so the way you advance your technology, basically he provided me what that tree looks like and what the actual real world technology was. And I translated all of that into the game mechanics that I had already designed for the system. So I can tell you, like I can go on and tell you what the name of the gear is, right? But truthfully, other than like him telling me, yeah, this is the missions that this was on, and this was an advancement of the prior gear, like he knows all of that stuff. He has a lot of the original documentation in Italian there's just not the same equivalent of information on the English side.
Okay.
So he had, so to kind of answer your question, there was the rebreather gear, right? So the British had some gear that was not of the same quality as what the Italians had. The Italians had multiple different breathing gear sets that got advanced over time. And so those are in the game. And I could dig out the names. They don't really mean anything to me, the designators. But it did give them the ability to breathe underwater for, a few hours, right? Because throughout the mission, they would alternate, depending on the situation, between just being above the water versus being,
fully submerged.
Fully submerged.
Why would they be above the water? I'm curious.
Because there's things that you can do above the water. First of all, it's not as much strain on you being under the water as you're piloting the torpedo, right? But I think more importantly, if I'm on the water, on the top of the water, I can see the harbor that I'm trying to attack, and I can see my targets, and I can orient myself to it. All that stuff much easier. If I'm under the water, I can't do that nearly as well, right? And so that's modeled in the game, where if all you want to do is reorient the SLC, you either have to take a pilot action to do it, or you have to spend a couple action points. Where if you're on the surface, you can just do it as a single action.
Now,
much easier.
I must have missed that part. So if you're on the surface, you don't have to spend the point.
You spend one action. You can spend one action point and be automatically successful if you're on the surface.
Okay.
But if you're subsurface, you have the choice, right? You can take a pilot check with one action point, or you can just automatically be successful with two.
Now,
I gotcha.
David, I don't know much about the history of this. Were there any night missions? And if there was night missions, they didn't see anything, because they can't have a spotlight, pointing at the target. That's a dead giveaway. They're going to get killed.
They could, but it'd be the shortest mission ever.
So, yeah. So Like all of our modern day naval ops, right? So if you go and you study like what naval special forces do, they're going to operate at night, and they're going to operate when it's the best illumination for them to operate at night, right? And they were doing the same thing. So they only operated at night. So every mission begins at about 11 or midnight, if optimally, and ends early enough to provide them enough darkness to try to escape, right? So probably no later than about 5 a.m. do you want to try to be done with your mission. You could probably go back right now and pick those dates of the missions, all 9 missions out, and they're all going to be best lunar illumination for the attack, right? So they were using lunar illumination to their advantage. But Gibraltar's they're a beacon because they have 4,000 searchlights going on, all of that stuff. So at night the harbor's lit up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying that they would surface and then go back submerged. So they were not. These were converted torpedoes. You were saying, right? They were basically kind of poor man's subs. Yep. So they weren't like running like diesel and electric like with the World War II subs where you'd stay submerged, but you only had so much battery power before you had to snorkel, and that way your engines would run while your battery's charged. Yeah,
that's right. There's all sorts of problems, right? The torpedoes could only take so much pressure, so they couldn't be down. The battery was a constant problem. Ballast tank problems. Yeah,
air too.
Yeah, air. Absolutely. Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to run out of that.
Yep.
Now, do you know if they had a max depth that they would go? I'm just curious. I know it has nothing to do with the game, but
I don't think that any of them had any problems going. Yes, absolutely, they had max depth, but I think that all the harbors they were operating in were shallow enough that it wasn't an issue, right? There were instances. Typically, they would go to the max depth to do a lot of the work on detaching the warhead. So, for people who are maybe watching and don't know how this works, so they would pilot the torpedo up to the target. They would get to the target. They would detach the front of the torpedo, which is the actual limpet mine or the warhead, and then they would attach that to the target vehicle, right? So they had to do all of that, detaching the warhead and attaching it. And so it's much easier to handle that on the surface, right? The ocean floor, right?
How were they attached? Were they attached magnetically, or?
So they would. So some of them were magnetic. I think, and I may have some of this wrong. Like there was like a way in which they use a wire to suspend it around the target, right? But they did have magnetic mines too, and they were different size warheads, right? They got to a point where they were so advanced that they actually could carry 2 warheads at a time, so they could attack multiple targets in a single mission with a single SLC.
Wow.
Now, David, you know the game Enemy Coast Ahead by Jeremy White?
I do know of it. I haven't played it. Yeah.
Now, is there like a training mission before the actual mission in the game, or you're straight into the action?
You're straight into the action. And I'll tell you this, one thing that I'm a little bit worried about, right? And Gimpy experienced this, right? So Nate experienced this. So the first mission, you have operators that have a little bit of skill. This is when you're doing the historic mission, right? The first historic mission. But it's modeled historically. So what that means is you're dealing with prototype equipment that is super faulty.
I hate that card. I hate that card. I hate that card, dude. So I know what you're getting ready to say, and I hate that card. Like, I almost didn't want to play with it.
So here's the deal. You're playing with prototype equipment. That's really bad. Well, that means that you've got a 1 in 6 chance of not having a fault check, right? Like, it's already bad enough. But because it depends on where they launched the actual operation from. So in the first mission, they put the torpedoes and the operators on the sub, the approach sub in La Spezia. So they did a long sail to get to Gibraltar. So by the time they get there, the operators are exhausted. The equipment's been banged around. And so you get out, and now before the mission starts, you have to make 2 fault checks for for each of these SLCs. So before you even get the first hex moved, you could have one of the man torpedoes that's busted ballast tank, the battery's got a problem, the warhead's got a fault, like all sorts of problems could be. So here's my concern with the game. I think there will be people who play that first mission and they're like, this game sucks. I can't do anything. I've got faults everywhere. And so hopefully people understand that, like, well, you're experiencing what they experienced. So none of those operators in the first mission, they never even got too close to the harbor. They got like halfway there. They're like, hey, we can't complete this mission. We got to turn around and go home.
Yeah, it's experimental equipment with an experimental idea on an experimental mission. Yeah. I mean, everything was try hard. There was no rule book to follow on that. So I think thematically it very much works, but gameplay wise, like I was looking at the card and I was like, this is one SLC. No, it says each. This is everyone. Like, I wonder if he'd mind if I just ignored this card. I was like, no, I can't do that.
Actually, sounds like you need an arcade scenario in there, so you can have one train up scenario.
Well, what's funny is I thought about, because if there's the rule book and then there's the mission guide, right? And so in the rule book, I just have the first mission laid out, and I've thought about changing that up. So the first mission in the rule book is not the first mission. And I've kind of waffled, back and forth on that so that people play it one time with a different experience.
Yeah.
Now, for lack of better word, how do you level up to get rid of that card?
Yeah. So advancing the place from which you launch your attacks, it's called your forward position, is one of the tech upgrades that you can purchase with your victory points, right? So the way that works is you complete a mission, you've accrued victory points by either successfully scuttling your SLC, and what that represents is you purposely destroy the SLC after the mission's complete in such a way that it hides it so that the British can't find it, right? Which is a really big deal. You did not want the British to find how you had attacked, right? So if you scuttle that, you get a victory point. If your operators escape, you get a victory point, and then you get victory points for every ship you destroy. So you'll use those victory points to advance your technology. Now you can advance your SLC, so you can not have a piece of junk prototype. You can advance your warheads. You can advance your breathing gear, your wetsuit. But the one you're asking about is advancing your forward position. So starting on the second mission in the game, historically, they launched their attack. They picked up the guys on a much closer position. They picked them up on Cadiz. Yeah.
Yeah, this little card right here. I hate that.
Fault check.
Yeah, 2 fault checks for each SLC before you even start the game. So
that's not a random card. That's the card you use to begin the game.
That's right. Yep. That's the card you use because of where you're starting from. So the first thing I would ever do in every mission is probably upgrade your forward position, so you don't have to do that.
We had a question here from T-1 saying, did the historical mission make any impact on the war effort?
So there's two ways in which the historical missions impact the war effort, I would say. The first way is so there were multiple missions that were attempted prior to when the game starts. The game starts when they were actually able to start getting these missions underway, right? So the first few missions in Gibraltar were unsuccessful. The first couple, they would try, they couldn't accomplish anything, and they would basically abort the mission. The British never even knew about one of those. What's called BG4, which is Gibraltar 4th mission. That's what the Italian designation was. They destroyed cargo ships. At that point, the British started taking them really seriously. So even though they only destroyed cargo ships, not Navy ships, so there wasn't like a direct impact, they were hugely disproportionately causing the British to account for them, meaning the British were pouring in tons of resources. They were depth charging everything. They had motor launches out, cruising everywhere. So the British were hugely disproportionately responding to this threat. The real direct impact came when they successfully attacked Alexandria, and they basically knocked out the Valiant and the Queen Elizabeth, which are 2 battleships, right? So you have dudes riding human torpedoes knocking out 2 battleships.
That's insane.
It's insanity, yeah. So it was so bad for the British that it was a secret.
Pretty good ROI on that.
Yeah, huge ROI. So I mean, they knock out 2 battleships. The British they hide it because they don't want to admit, what happened. But absolutely massive impact. Now,
so when you say they knocked it out, like out of order completely, or
out of order completely. So both those battleships were out of commission for a while. the Queen Elizabeth they put in dry dock for repairs, and it was still in repairs midway through the following year. So I don't know, like 7-8 months later, when they went back to try to re-attack it to prove that they could, get there. Now that was a hugely unsuccessful mission.
That would have been pretty awesome if they pulled it off. I have to say, that'd have been like, we take it down, you bring it back up, we take it back down.
Yep.
Then we had a question here. Said, do the pilots go up with the torpedo? Is this a one-way ride, or did they bail?
So no pilot was ever killed from the torpedo, like the warhead itself. There were operators who were killed. Most of the time, they were captured, right? So the two most common results is they go up to the target. Well, they never make it, right? They abort the mission. That happened frequently. If they made it to the target, whether it was the original intended target or they realized, hey, I can't get into the inner harbor, so I'll just go for a cargo ship or something like that. That happened frequently. They would get there, they would detach the warhead, attach it, and depending on the port they were in, would drive their level of likelihood of being able to escape. So, for example, in Gibraltar, where you have the Spanish, who are basically, you had your own agents who had infiltrated the Spanish, and the Spanish were kind of willing to turn a blind eye, you had a really good chance of swimming to the Spanish shore and escaping. That was, if you could make it to Spain, you were fine. You were fine. Anybody who made it there. Algiers and Alexandria, nobody made it out without being captured. Every single guy was captured. And they assumed that you would be, right? So from an Italian planning perspective, they always had more guys being trained to take the place of the guys who were going to go on the mission, expecting those guys would not come back. There were examples. So like some guys were trying to force the inner harbor once the British started using the shore-based mortars that I mentioned before, that were the depth charges for the entrances into it, and they got killed from that. There's other examples of a couple of guys getting killed. Not a lot of guys died, but they were either usually captured or did manage to escape.
Then we have another question from Christian Corellis. Hello, everyone. I don't have much experience in solo games. How difficult is this game compared to Pavlov's House? It's one of the few experiences I have in solo games, and I love Pavlov's House. Good taste.
Sweet. What do you think, Gippy? I mean, I think I'll try to not answer that first because I'm obviously.
I was going to say you're probably a little more biased since
without the fault cards, though.
You made them.
Yeah, from a complexity, not a difficulty perspective, right? A complexity perspective is what he's. That's the question. When you say how difficult, do you mean?
Yeah, like is the game hard or is it complex to play?
Right. So we can answer both, right?
If he was going to go for complexity, like how hard is the game to play, I would say By Stealth and Sea is a little bit easier than Pavlov's House, just in my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. And it's not a huge difference, but I think Pavlov's House has those many gradients, right? You got the strategic level and then the whatever level and then the tactical level.
Yeah.
All right. As you go down, there's a lot more to keep track of there. So with By Stealth and Sea, there's a lot less you got to keep track of. When it comes to actual difficulty of winning the game, they're probably on par with each other. As long as you're not playing with that first card.
Unless you're Joe.
That first card, By Stealth and Sea wins out difficulty by far.
Unless you're Joe over here. Then if you're drinking, there's no internet spending. So we expect you to be back in it tomorrow morning, there, Joe.
Oh man, I've done that so many times. Like I don't know, I've done that, and I've received a vacuum cleaner or something. It's like
it seemed like a good idea at the time.
At the time, yeah,
I just sit there watching TV. I just sit there watching late night TV. I don't know where all these charges from QVC for. What the hell?
But you know what? I'm gonna pledge for this game. I can't wait. I think it's great.
No, it's a good game. I highly recommend. Although I've liked everything David's made.
Yeah.
You could probably make tic-tac-toe and call it a war game, and I'd probably get into it at this point. So I really haven't done me wrong yet.
No, and you know what? You've chosen obviously many obscure battles and titles. Like what? I'm afraid to ask what's in your head for the next game.
Well, first of all, you know why I picked those? because if I design a game about Battle of the Bulge, everybody will tell me how I'm doing it wrong. So I just take something that nobody knows about, right? And I'm like, yeah, you can't.
Although it would sell, though. It would sell real easy, though. If it was Bulge, Gettysburg, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No, not necessarily. There are some people like myself who are a little burnout on the hundreds of Eastern Front and hundreds of Bulge and
bite your tongue. Eastern Front. Never enough Eastern Front games.
Eastern Front is my third favorite. Okay. Pacific Theater is the first. You're a Marine, dude. You should.
Hey, it's
Pacific
right there.
Theater.
They're right alongside each other. I mean, the way I look at it personally is East Front and the Pacific Theater, especially when you come to Stalingrad. Stalingrad was much bigger environment. It was urban, but I think the fighting in both was pretty close to on par. Although I still say the Pacific is just a little more savage, but it was pretty savage.
Were there Marines fighting on the Eastern Front? No,
probably Russian Marines or Soviet Marines. You know,
that's true.
I mean, real Marines.
There, you know,
there were Navy infantry in the Battle of Stalingrad. That's for sure.
Yeah. So there you go. There's your answer.
You know,
that doesn't count.
In between Pacific, Eastern, and Western, the reason why I don't do Pacific is because it scares the daylights out of me to be in a jungle. And first of all, I remember seeing some guys in Iraq. I think they were in Iraq somewhere, and they're just walking. You know, they're walking in a line. All of a sudden, they're getting shots. Right? They drop to the ground. There's a little stone wall. They're there, and the guy's got like a GoPro happening, and the big flying hornets like flying around them. Forget shooting at the guys at the Taliban or whatever they're shooting at. There's these insects the size of my hand, and they're flying around them, and it's like, that would freak me out. So
you should see the camel spiders, dude.
The camel spiders.
Yeah, literally, I was on watching our COC, our Center of Command, and I'm manning the radio station, and I thought a rat ran across the floor.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't a rat. Somebody was like, "Oh my god, that's a camel spider!" And these things are as big as your damn hand, literally. Look it up. Those things are ugly. Like I wouldn't get anywhere near those damn things. Like
so. I mean, that's why I don't do the Pacific, because you're in a jungle. I mean, what's going to attack you? A tiger? You know what I'm saying? It's like
sure.
I'd rather have
the environment too, as well as the enemy.
I could deal with the jungle. I hated the desert. The sand was powdery. It was like talcum powder, and it got everywhere. I still have bags that have sand.
I mean, that's why I do Western Front, because you're in France. You pop a bottle of wine, hey, you know what I'm saying?
Until the bulge happens, and then it's like, wow, it's cold.
I mean, yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Stalingrad. Forget Iwo Jima, man. Give me Paris. Give me Berlin, man. You know
that's actually kind of a good point, David. Do you have any plans for any modern stuff? Because you've hit kind of futuristic fiction, and you've hit World War II, but you don't have anything, modern day. Do you have any Iraq, Afghanistan?
Yes. So we can talk about. So first of all, before I forget, Dan, you had asked about what I was working on next. We can come back to that, but it's soldiers and postmen's uniforms, right? So that's the Poland post office defense. World War II.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Another story I've never heard about.
So it's cool, man. So it's going to be a fun one. But I went to Gdansk in Poland, like modern day Danzig, right before I left, as a sort of my research trip for that. So it's going to be fun. But here's the deal with modern day. So I'm prior Air Force, right? But as a civilian, in my civilian life, I'm an intel guy. And I've been to Iraq a couple of times, right? And so when people ask me because there's a lot of people who've asked me about doing like modern day Afghanistan defense, with Pavlov's house rules maybe, or something like that, right? I can't do it. I don't like doing anything modern day. And here's the thing. So all my games that I've designed so far that are like the solitaire games are super skirmish level with the actual people on counters. Like it's always the actual people. So I can't do anything that's modern day that I can personally relate to a person that's living now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. It bothers
I know people who serve there. People
exactly.
who serve there.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
I serve there.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yep. So,
and plus, not to mention the fact that if you make a mistake, I'm not saying you would, but if you make a mistake, there are absolutely people alive today who could call you out on it too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's I don't know if I'd say it's respect. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I like the ability to be super detailed at the skirmish tactical level. But I'm not comfortable doing anything with anybody that's still living today that participated in that conflict. So World War II winds up being kind of the sweet spot because you've got enough historical detail to be able to model it accurately, but you're not dealing with people, modern conflicts.
Right. Well, that's a point that even some gamers have.
Yeah.
I've heard gamers even talk. They'll say like a distant plane, for example, or any of the next war series is hypothetical. So that doesn't count as much, but a lot of people say like Labyrinth and a distant plane. And I don't want to play that. It's still happening. Some people feel weird about that. Me, I'm like, hey, it's a game. Number one, it's a game. Number one, it's a game. Number two, whether it's present or past, it doesn't matter. It's history. It happened or it is happening. So as long as the subject is treated with respect, I'm fine with it either way.
Yeah, and I'm okay with playing something that's modern, that's either pretty abstract or strategic level, right? Like those are fine. And I just made Europe Divided, right? Mm-hmm. So modern day, right? Literally post Cold War, but it's all super abstract,
Dice Light Struggle
stuff. Yeah.
That was the first thing I was like, oh, this is like Dice Light Struggle. A lot of dice, like Twilight Struggle.
Well, think about it. There's that game that I featured for a short period of time, and I just never went back to it. The Phantom Fury by Nuts Publishing. And I found myself, because I was there, like I was on those streets. I got wounded on those streets. So every time I was playing the game or trying to film it, I ended up just basically telling war stories, which a lot of people like because they like hearing about that stuff. But it brought back memories because while I'm playing the game, I'm looking at it and going, is this the street? Was this where I was at? Was this where these guys were at? And it is a little different when you're actually looking at a map that's of a place where you actually were.
Bloody hell.
Mm-hmm.
In the shit.
You know what, Nate? I've asked Mo, I've asked other people because I wanted to interview. I wanted to do the 4 questions with you, but it just freaked me out.
I thought I did that.
400 questions.
Did you? No, you didn't do the 4 questions.
No, my wife did the 4 questions.
Oh my God, I forgot. Anyways, and the thing is, I wanted you to do it, but I don't know what to ask, man. It's like, you see, when you're looking at that map, it's reminding you of stuff like that, and I can't even imagine being in a situation like that.
He's going to tell you the same thing I told you when I talked to you about it. Ask him anything. Ask him anything.
Yeah, that's Mo said. Just ask him anything, and I'm like, no.
What's the worst I'm going to say? Kiss my ass. Yeah.
No, it's I don't know. It might strike a feeling that you don't like or something. Like I was talking to one guy, and I'm not gonna name him, okay? Just for not naming him, at the WBC, and most of the people that I met, the war gamers, a lot of them were either in the Army, in the Navy, Marines, Rangers, stuff like that. And I asked one guy, I said, "Hey, can you talk about your war experiences?" And he kind of flipped. He was like, "No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready." And I wasn't ready for an answer like that. Like, oh my God, I pushed a button type thing. And he was in tears a little bit, man. And it flipped me out. It flipped me.
I think some guys think that they're supposed to react that way, and they try to put off that persona. I can't talk about it. I can't talk. There's some stuff I won't talk about. Yeah, but if I won't talk about it, I just won't talk about it. There's just some subjects I don't broach. I just don't want to get into it. My brother's the same way. I don't know if you know this, but my twin brother was there with me.
Yeah.
We served. I was in the radio unit. He was in the MP lot, but we did a lot of the same missions because we were in the same gun trucks. The day I got hit, we were in the same. No, we were in the same truck. We started the same truck, and
apart.
Yep, I always tell him it's his fault that I got wounded because the sergeant pulled me out. He's like, "Look, if we get hit today, we're going to a bad area. If we get hit, your parents will kill me if you both die in the same truck. So, You go get in the other one, and I got put in the one that got friggin' blown up. So he's still mad. It's his fault. You got me hurt, you bastard. And we chuckle about it. But yeah, I think some people like have watched movies or, see shit online or whatever. And they're like, yeah, I gotta cry and scream about it or shit like that. Like, look, I know guys that were hurt, guys that were killed. And there's just, some shit I won't get into. I don't want to get into it. They are bad memories, but I'm not going to like yell at somebody if they ask me.
No. Well, he wasn't yelling. Man, he lost a lot of men, he said. And I think that's what it's probably worse that, and I'm just talking out loud. That's probably worse than you getting hit yourself. That's a stupid thing.
Survivor guilt. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It's just the guilt. But
I let me tell you this, because this is worse. I'm sorry, David. I'm not trying to like change
no, not at all, man. Not at all.
This bitch, man, I'd punch this bitch today if I ran into her. I still hate this bitch. Pardon my French, but my brother.
That was English. That was English. In French, they call it.
We were out. We were deployed, and it had been a bad day. We'd lost a couple of guys, and my brother was on the mission where he had to go recover the bodies, and he didn't take it too well. It was guys that we knew, and he wasn't feeling it. And we had these little stations on base where there were phones and payphones and computers and stuff set up where you could go email, call home. So he got back from the mission and he went to call his fiance. They'd been together since high school. I mean, this is first love type shit. So they'd been together, I think 6, 7, 8 years at this point. He calls her up and he tells her what happened. It's like, look, I've just been having a bad day. I just need to hear a friendly voice. And this is the moment she decides, well, I hate to tell you this, but yeah, I've been seeing your friend, so I'm going to leave you. I'll just like give your stuff to your folks or something. Wow. And yeah, and like the dude bought her the ring. They play in the house, the kids, and like she was 14 when they got together, right? Been together that long. And she cheated on him with one of our fraternity brothers, right? And it was bad. We had to take his weapons away from him, and we got him drunk for a couple of days. We were afraid he was going to kill himself because he was that bad off. Just lost his guys, recovers the bodies, tells her he just needs a friendly voice, and that's the moment she decided that she needed to tell him that she'd been cheating on him for months. And yeah, that guy was kicked out of our fraternity very, very quickly. And someone, don't know who it was, and I'm not lying when I say I don't know, destroyed his car. I mean, beat that thing.
Karma.
Broken. And he wanted to get a restraining order against my brother, and he tried. I don't think it actually went through because he was afraid Matt was going to kill him when we got back.
He's in the sandbox. He didn't do nothing.
Yeah, well, when we got back from being deployed, and we kind of chuckled. I'm like, I'm the one he needs to get the restraining order against. I'm gonna kill him if I see him, because I had known this kid. But on the bright side, they're poor and they're fat now. So,
Karma.
That's great. They're broke and they're ugly as shit.
Well,
I'm loving it.
Two things. Number one is Jeff says a little late to the party. Congratulations on the launch of the Kickstarter, David. And I'm hoping by Stealth and Sea is as successful as Pavlov's House and Itter, which is a great comment to make. But I wanted to make a comment about Dan, his background. We've all talked about it off camera, and we're going to talk about it here. That awesome cover, probably one of the sexiest covers in wargaming ever.
Yeah. So first of all, huge thanks to Jeff. So Jeff is one of the first people who played Pavlov's House. He played it when it was like a print and play. And so there's a few people who I always will think of, right, when I think of like becoming a designer and all that. And Jeff's one of those guys because he's been there supporting me from the beginning. So thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. Yeah, the cover's awesome, right? So the cover is from an Italian artist who was doing his work at the time, right? So he was literally doing these paintings at the time during World War II. So the cover features his work, and then more of his work is featured on like the card backs and stuff. And so we're working with the Italian Navy to make sure they're comfortable with our usage of his artwork.
Oh, that's good. I didn't even think about taking that step.
Yeah.
That's respectful of you guys to take that step.
Yeah.
Is he the same guy that did the cover for Pavlov's House and Eider? Did you
No,
say?
no. So his specialty is like military Navy stuff, right? So if you go and research him, he's done a lot of other naval, Italian naval paintings and stuff, right? So now Pavlov's House is an actual photograph of the monument to Pavlov's house in Stalingrad. And then Castle Itter is Matt White, who's one of my favorite war game artists.
They've really got that face thing?
Yeah. That's just a picture. That's just a picture of the monument.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. I remember when my wife did her little guesses video and she couldn't see the face.
Right.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't get it. It's just like bricks.
It's the face of Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to put it out there. I'm like, look, eyes, nose, mouth, helmet up here. Oh, I see. Yeah, she thought that was cool, but I really liked the cover for that one. I didn't realize it was a picture.
Yeah, I love it. I love them all. But I mean, I loved working with Matt because Matt's like one of the coolest guys in wargaming, right? He does his own design work, but his art is phenomenal. He did art for the newest version of Conflict of Heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, and the newest version is great. I keep talking that up, but it is great.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Is this the By Stealth and See? Is this pretty much what we can expect as final art? Or are you still touching up?
So your prototype, the card backs and stuff were just plain, but also all of that'll be updated with more of other. It's all art from that same painter, all of XMOS units doing operations, right? So it's all good stuff.
I can't hear that without chuckling. The whole XMOS thing, it always makes me giggle. Hold up. I didn't realize. Okay, so you're saying this is just like generic, but you're gonna have different backs on there. Okay.
Yeah, I don't myself have. So here's one of the dark secrets about me. I've gotten to the point now where I don't make physical prototypes really anymore. I have a prototype like you do, right? But the first time I ever got a physical prototype, was the same time you did. So everything I do now is all on Tabletop Simulator.
Well, your prototypes aren't as much prototypes as they are, I guess, what's the best word? I mean, it's close to a production.
Yeah, they're like pre-production
PPCs,
quality. Yeah. I got into a habit of trying to put a lot of effort into my print and plays and that kind of stuff, because I was trying to find ways to entice playtesters to actually be interested, right? Because if you're a playtester, you have like 4,000 options of things you can spend time on. And so if you have a game that looks kind of nice, I found that it's a lot easier to get playtesters. So,
and plus, I hate print and play.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not that I hate the games. I just hate the effort.
I do too. I used to, back when I was in England, so I was doing a lot more physical prototyping, meeting people and working on the actual physical versions. I used to just sitting there and I'm cutting paper and sleeving stupid stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm not designing board games to be a crafts guy, right? Like,
I can get it like in your very, very, very early stages when you're just trying to test the design concept.
Yeah.
Just cutting out some sheets of paper just for placeholders as you flesh it out, you're working on it. But when you're into that phase, this is much better.
So I can tell you, if I'm in the middle of a session of Tabletop Simulator and I want to make some changes, I can go into Photoshop, make the changes, upload it in like 30 seconds and just iterate much, much quicker than I can with a physical. Even just taking a piece of paper and writing stuff and re-sleeving the cards probably takes longer.
Damn, I wasn't even thinking about that. The digital age has probably made this way easier than back in the day.
Yeah.
No, that's not bad. I didn't realize Tabletop Simulator was that easy.
Yeah, now I think the last I looked, I'd logged something like 5,000 hours on it, right? Wow. So I live in it, right? But so it's not super, super easy, but once you get familiar with it, it's easy to iterate.
Now we need to get Dan in there. So he can play some digital games, because Dan's always talking about he plays a lot of solitaire games because doesn't have a lot of people around him. Well, there you go, Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, but then it's just another thing, fly fishing, mushrooms, waking up. I mean, seriously,
haircuts.
Did you say mushrooms?
Oh, nice.
It's funny. I spoke to her tonight and I said, she says, Dan, you're going to get a haircut? And I said, well, you're going to cut my hair? No. She says, make an appointment. I said, why don't you want to cut my hair? Because I don't want to cut nobody's hair anymore. So I'm letting it grow out there and look as stupid as possible to make her look silly.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Success.
Oh,
I'm sorry, but I couldn't help it. I gotta rip you a little bit.
I mean, hopefully I get to go to WBC, and this is just gonna look ridiculous.
Is she coming with you?
No.
Ah, well, I always got to take my family with me, and they have.
Well, I would have taken her, but this is when Quebec shuts down for 2 weeks because it's construction holiday, and so she has to let her employees get the choice vacation. So
the hell's a construction holiday?
Yeah, come to Quebec, man.
Just make a holiday for everything. David, are you planning on going to the WBC?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. So I was originally, because honestly I want to meet you guys. Whoever are you going to be there?
Yep.
Oh man, this is getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go so I can meet everyone.
Go.
But the problem is, in Harold. So Harold and I had talked about going to WBC and then driving from there together to Gen Con.
And that was the response right there, the cry.
I don't know, man. If all you guys are going to be there, maybe I'll just do it.
And who's this guy Harold you're talking about?
I know.
He's
the taskmaster now, man. He's enlisted me in the insurgency army. So, I've got Gen Con responsibilities now.
It is kid friendly, just in case you're bringing your kids with you. My kids come with us.
Oh, really?
They've got a bunch of stuff that kids can do. There's a game room. There's the little play area, the pool, the bouncy things, the jumpy things. They've got the ski lifts open, and my kids love just going up and down, looking at the mountains. I think your kids range between like 5 and 10, right?
6 to 10. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's plenty of stuff for them to do.
Yeah.
We brought my young brother-in-law with us last year, and he was 9 or 10, and he had a great time. He's wanting to go with us again. So
I mean, they have a bowling alley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So now, do you guys stay at the resort, or do you stay somewhere else and go to it?
I stayed at the resort.
But we stayed at the resort, but I don't know what's going to happen this year. David, I think, wanted to rent a big place so we can all run around naked, stuff like that.
I didn't hear about this.
On second thought, maybe I am going to Gen Con. I don't know.
He did talk to me something about having an auditorium to do a bunch of filming in.
I see that. I seen it. It's cool.
That we had set up last year. I think he's planning on doing that. But I think he's also still planning on having kind of like that suite room.
Yeah, that room was that was awesome. That room was great because it was big and you can have a gathering, which is what we did when we had that impromptu war game chat. And then we could film a bunch of different videos, which is what we did there. And hopefully we'll get to do the same again this year.
If you do look into going, I would look into getting the rooms that have like the passes with them.
Okay.
Because if you buy the passes for the kids stuff individually, it's more expensive than if you get like the room deal.
Okay.
So you can save a little money that way.
Yeah. But Dave, come on, Dave. Money's no object. David, he's the war game designer of the year, man. He's cash is coming in.
You actually did get nominated for something though, didn't you? Recently, I thought you posted on Facebook about that.
I don't know.
Or maybe it was one of your games that I'm thinking of.
I don't know.
Oh, the war chest.
Was that it? I saw it on Facebook. I want to say it was last couple of
weeks.
I
saw that too.
I don't know what that would be.
We are, just to do a quick update here, we are getting close to the halfway point. We're currently at 93.41.
Nice. I'm going to go back at myself for $700.
There you go.
I don't want you to forget to talk about it. So I was going to ask you what the insurgency thing was.
That's what I was going to bring up to the insurgency.
Yep. So that's a good transition. So why I can't go to WBC, right? Hopefully I can. So last year, Grant and Alexander from the Players Aid, Harold, Buchanan, and a couple other guys kind of close to last minute, threw together what was called the Wargamers Insurgency. So then the little like pun is the IN are both capitalized, right? So short for Indiana or Indianapolis. So the idea is to like bring wargaming back to Gen Con, right? Because I mean, Gen Con was based on wargaming, and now it's So we did it one day. It was all day long. We had a bunch of we just basically got together inside the gaming library at Gen Con, and we tried to coordinate as many events as possible on BGG through a geek list, which was okay. It wasn't a great way to do it, but it was okay. So this year, Harold's leading the effort to work with Gen Con to make it an official thing. All of our events are now in they're scheduled. So like I have an Undaunted tournament one day. Jason Matthews has a Twilight Struggle tournament one day. So tons and tons of events scheduled. It's all 4 days. We are still trying to figure out where exactly we're going to be, but I don't know. I guess I probably can't. So probably we'll be in the dome, right? With what's it?
Lucas Oil.
Yeah, Lucas Oil. I always want to say RCA. That's what it used to be, right? Back in the day. Lucas Oil, which is I don't know if you guys have been there or seen it, but it's an awesome. Like it's just ridiculous, right? Because you got the entire stadium is basically open game space. You know, I mean they have different things going on, but maybe we'll be in there. I'm not sure. So what our goal is to have all these events lined up, you know, different games, whatever, and then we're going to try to have some open game space too. So if you just want to bring your own stuff, I know Gen Con thinks that's kind of weird, right? Like to them, it's strange that people would want to just bring their own thing and set up their own games. Like they operate very much in the idea that like we're going to have an event and it's going to be for this very specific thing. You're going to sign up ahead of time. But we've tried to convince them like we're war gamers. We operate a little bit differently, right? We just, we want open game space and people will bring your own games and you're going to play what you want to play.
Well, they had a lot more to do with war games back in the day, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And it just kind of bled out into Magic and tabletop and all the other crap that they got going on now. Yeah. So, I mean, best of luck to you. I can't make it to Gen Con, so yeah. I hope it goes well.
This is the last year for at least the foreseeable future. I think that Gen Con and WBC are at the same time. Yeah. So if I do miss WBC this year, I'll definitely be there next year.
How much at the same time are we talking about? It's the same week?
It's the same. So WBC goes weekend to weekend, right? Yeah. So it's the Thursday weekend through the Sunday of the second week.
Oh damn, that sucks.
So it's almost good if you wanted to do both and not be there for the full WBC. You could be there for the first half and then go to Indy for the second half if you wanted to do that.
So as a guy who's never been to WBC before, what is it like? Is it kind of an equal distribution of people there the whole time, or does it get more people in the back half, or
a little bit more? I think towards the second weekend, a little bit more as the week wears on. But it's one of those things where a lot of people show up and stay the entire week. There's a little bump later on, but the one thing you'll notice a massive difference is you can actually walk around. Yeah. You can breathe. You're not, feeling like people are on top of you and everything else. It's not 70,000 people. It's a couple thousand. So, man,
I tell you, so Lucas Oil is cool. Like it's not packed or whatever, but being in the vendor hall at Gen Con,
I wouldn't even bother.
It's brutal.
You got to mention the thing about they're weird about their vendors at WBC, that open vendors can't set up till like Wednesday or Thursday, right?
Yeah, that doesn't start till I think it is Thursday.
I don't understand.
What's
just an agreement that they have? Decision has a thing where they run for several days, and it's just an agreement they've had with WBC for years. So they're open ahead of everyone else, which is fine. And then they have their one.
No, that's
area.
Not fine. That's irritating.
It's fine that they have that. Well, they have that agreement first, so it's fine from you're there first, you get the better thing. But they're also by themselves, whereas the vendor hall, everybody goes to the vendor hall, and you go past the decision booth when you're going into the gaming area, but you just go past it into the gaming area. Whereas when you go into the vendor hall, you're going into the vendor hall, and you're intending to go in there and spend money. and you will spend money.
So if I went to the first half, none of the vendors would be open yet.
No,
Nope.
no, they'd be because you leave what, Thursday,
I'd probably leave Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah, you'd
morning.
leave before they started. But
Well,
anyway,
Decision Games is going to be open.
That's
Honestly,
cool.
to be truthful with you, it felt more to me that it kicked off more when the vendor hall opened.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You know, and it was kind of like those few days before was kind of like the prelude.
Okay.
People were just kind of walking around, getting a feel of things, meeting people, seeing some of the prototypes in the play halls, just catching up, you know.
Yeah.
And then when the vendors actually got to set up their stuff, people got excited. And
Well,
I
yeah,
mean-
because you got to look at all the new shinies.
Yeah.
yes,
And I mean, here's the thing, like, and this is genuine. If I went, it would be more to meet you guys in person than it would be to do anything else, right? Like, I would play games, right? But I don't need to buy a bunch of stuff, right? And so meeting people's for me, that's the number one thing at conventions is like meeting people and that kind of stuff. So
Well,
then,
that's usually what happens at conventions is like, yeah, we'll play this, we'll play that,
Yeah.
we'll play
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Next thing you know, it's like, now everybody's just sitting around drinking and
yeah,
telling stories and having fun. And then about 11:30, 12 o'clock, hey, let's play a game. I don't want to play this one. I'll play. Let's play something simple, you know. And that's usually what happens. But
Well, I want to try to do again what we did last year, where we had that little round table where a bunch of us
That was
and
awesome.
other designers sat around. We just talked about everything, and especially now that I've opened up a little bit more, because back then I was a lot smaller and didn't kind of feel as comfortable with myself, and now I think I've got a bigger voice and a bigger presence. You know,
I
I'm
can't
not.
shut him up. He's like, Dan.
Yeah. What? I'm not as intimidated, you know, about being around some of the big names. Like, oh wow, Mark Herman's sitting in here. I'll just keep my mouth shut, you know.
Yeah, no.
Well, all you got to do with Mark, the best part about Mark is ask him a question, hand him the mic, go have a drink. He'll tell a story.
Uva's the same way.
Well, that's true.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to Rob Oren, and he made me laugh. He says, "Man, you ask Uva a question, you're gonna get the kink out of your neck because you'll be doing this." But I love Uva, man. He's
Yeah.
great.
Oh, no, he's great.
Yeah.
Isn't Rob like the nicest guy in the world?
He asked me to write a piece of music for him, you know, and you look at Rob and he kind of looks like me type thing, right? And
Yeah.
that guy's a monster. You know that guy's 61 years old.
Yeah.
Are
Really?
you shitting me? He's 61.
I couldn't believe it. I
Damn.
couldn't believe it. Anyways, he asks me, you know, write a piece of music, Dan. I will use it for something. So I'm thinking, this guy, he arms the size of my legs, and it's like he wants a hard rocking piece. But when I spoke to the guy, he was so nice,
Oh yeah.
so nice that I came out with a little acoustic piece, like deedle deedle.
Standing there playing the ukulele.
I had his face there, and I said, "This guy's not hard rock at all. He's a gentle soul. I mean, I wouldn't want to piss him off, but he's a gentle soul, man.
He is, yeah.
He's great."
Yeah, he is awesome.
That's the one thing I've noticed about the wargaming community is everyone's real nice. They're friendly. They're easygoing. Everybody's relaxed, and that's part of the reason I like going to WBC and I like bringing my family. Is that relaxed nature? Like what Mo was talking about, Gen Con, there's tens of thousands of people there.
Yeah.
You can't get through. And hell, I walk with a cane. Like the gimp with a limp thing, it's not a joke. Like I literally have a cane. I wouldn't be able to move through there. I'd have it
No.
kicked out from under me. You
No,
know?
it's horrible. I mean, so the one benefit I've had going to Gen Con the last couple of years is I'll have a game releasing, like I had War Chest or Undaunted, and so I get an exhibitor badge, so I can get in the hall before it opens, right? And so you walk around the hall and like, oh, this is cool. I'm not a buyer, right? So I don't really buy a whole bunch of stuff when I'm there anyway. But you know, it's fun to walk around and see everything. Then when it opens, I want no part of that hall. I don't want to step foot in it. You literally cannot just browse, right? That's impossible. The only thing you can do is just like, okay, I'm trying to get to this booth to get a thing that I already know about, so I'll go straight to that booth. Like there's zero ability to just wander around and enjoy yourself.
That just
It's
sounds
great if you're a
miserable to
seller,
me.
but it's great if you're a seller. If you're
Oh
a
yeah,
seller,
for
it's
sure.
great.
Yep.
And you know, isn't the coronavirus an issue with 70,000 people?
Only if they're Asian.
Only if they were over in Asia, or if they were in Iran, or wherever it is now. It's all over.
Italy's hit hard.
Well, it's becoming that is a good point, because that is going to, CDC just talked about today. They're expecting, they didn't say if, but when it does get here, they expect it to be a pandemic. So to prepare. And I think, we're talking about Jason Matthews earlier. He tweeted out today about the zombie apocalypse is upon us, or it will be upon us, or something. And I said, yeah, by the time it gets to the U.S., it'll, mutate to the H1Z1 virus.
Seriously, I mean, I don't know if you heard about that ship, that cruise ship that was I don't know how many 4,000 people, and it had to stop at a port somewhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20 minutes from my house. That's where it stopped. 20 minutes from my house.
Don't go to WBC. Stay home. Then we won't have coronavirus.
I mean, it's horrible what's happening.
No, it's terrible. I mean, we're making light of the situation, but
it's horrible,
it's obviously terrible. Yeah.
Me, Mo, and David will have fun without you, bud. We love you, though.
But, there is one way to fix that at WBC. Drink whiskey. Medicinal reasons. Right there.
I like that, Mo. I like that.
Absolutely. You know me, if I'm at a convention, there's going to be whiskey. Jeff did have another question for you. He says he's on a train heading home, so his network keeps dropping out. But what was the impetus for adding the faults to by Stealth and Sea, which was not in the Christmas prototype I played last year?
Yeah, so this goes back to
or was that Xmas, not Christmas?
Xmas, the Christmas game.
Yeah.
So when Jeff played, he played the very first original. So I had forgotten when I misspoke earlier when I was talking about Jeff. He actually played the print and play prototype for Castle Itter, which actually came before Pavlov's House. So he's the OG Dave Thompson supporter. So so when I first designed the game, it was a standalone mission, and it was not the first mission, right? So it was like one of their later missions, and they didn't have to deal with the faults as much as they did in the earlier prototypes. And so I would say it was a combination of, it was at the time, it was going to be just a single mission, super streamlined, kind of like a folio game, that was the intent, right? Mm-hmm. And so once it transitioned to be a much bigger piece, like with the campaign and all of the different modular bits to it and all of that, I wanted to integrate the fault concept in general, and then it became even more relevant to the earlier parts in the missions, where they had to deal with it with the prototypes much more so than in the later mission that Jeff played.
Well, the game would be lacking without that. I almost think it would be too easy. Like, you would feel like there was a missing piece. Maybe because I have already played it, I think that, but you would only have 3 phases, one of which would be cleanup.
Yeah. And it was like the original version, it really was more of a like, hey, here's a magazine game or a folio game or something you're going to play probably like 2 or 3 times. And it was just a way to say, this thing happened, and I'm going to give you a game about it, right? Not to be a fully fledged game with the intent of being tons of replayability and that kind of stuff.
There was something I was wanting to know about a different game, if you don't mind my asking.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call it Eider because that's what I do. Castle Eider, right?
Yeah.
It's, like I've said before, just like the tactical version of Pavlov's House expanded out. Did you make like a decision to just focus on that aspect, simulate or be similar to Pavlov's House, but you wanted a bigger version of that? Or you just didn't like how the strategic option worked previously in Pavlov's House?
The other way around, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I designed Castle Itter first for Eider.
Oh, really? So you expanded upon the concept.
Yeah, so I would say, so how did this happen? So I designed Castle Itter, right? So I was like, hey, let's design around this one-day event, right? And so if you think about Castle Itter, it is more literal in its interpretation of the tactical phase of combat than Pavlov's House, right? And so it had to be more tactically relevant and interesting because it's just one day of one combat. Whereas Pavlov's House, I don't know how well this translates, but it's like you're playing a game that's supposed to last for 2 months. And so when you have those Germans on those assault avenues of approach, it's not really supposed to be like, a squad literally in holding position for a sustained period. It's supposed to just kind of abstract away what happened over that course of time. And so they're really, if you think about it in those terms, there's really no way to model the tactical element of Pavlov's house to the same level of fidelity, unless you're just saying, hey, we're just going to do Pavlov's house for like a day, which you could have done, right? I could have done that. I could have said, hey, we're going to do Pavlov's house, but it's going to be like one day. But then you lose all of the operational element stuff.
That was just, for me, my favorite part of Pavlov's house was the tactical element. You know, it's just the part I liked most. So when you did Castle Itter next, I was like, wow, he took the part that I liked most and just expanded the shit out of it. This is great. Really love that. Plus, I've got to worry about it. I love the tank over to the side and the sight lines and where they were coming in. You know, to me, that just was great because of what I liked from Pavlov's. I didn't realize it was kind of backwards.
Yeah. No, and it's cool that you say that too, because I remember you saying that when you first reviewed it. And I was like, that's awesome, because so many people constantly say that they love the 3 different levels of Pavlov's house so that to know that like there's people who the tactical nature of Castle Itter that appeals to them, right? So that's nice to know.
Well, tactical is always fun because it gives you the immediacy of the combat, whereas the strategic operational is more the thinky chess pieces.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, okay, let's do this, 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 and this. Oh, now let's really fight. Now you get down to the brawl.
Yeah.
And that's where you really feel you can actually feel the effects of decisions you made elsewhere kind of trickle down to that level. Not massive impact, but you can feel the impact.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how conscious I am when I do this, but I try to think of like, what story am I trying to tell? And with Itter, for sure, it's the story of, can we hold out for the day, right? But for Pavlov's house, it's can you hold out, but it's more about, and I discovered this as I was researching. When I originally went to do the research for Pavlov's house, I thought it was going to be Castle Itter Part 2. I thought it was going to be defending a house, right? And when I started the research, I was like, no, and I forget who said it. Somebody reviewed it recently or mentioned it recently, and they said it really well, where it like it takes an army to defend a house. That's what that's how they described it. And so that's the story I wanted to tell with Pavlov's house, is like, yeah, you've got to defend the house, but it takes this entire army supporting you to defend it successfully. And it was important for me to tell that story because the Russians specifically do not tell that story, right? The Russians say that these dudes defended the house for 3 months by themselves.
Yeah, no,
not true.
With one bottle of water and a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
You get it though. I mean, they're trying to inspire. They're trying to
for sure.
bolster the troops and get them feeling 10 feet tall and bulletproof. It's what they do in the Marines. It's why they teach us all the history that they do to get us all pumped up and thinking we're the same way. Oh, look at these Marines. They did these amazing things. You go do the same shit.
Look at what they did with, Ewo. You know, those guys, they raised a flag, the second flag raising. They took a picture of it. And, Rosenthal just literally, it was, oh, there she goes. And he was messing around with his camera and he just went, oh, snap. Oh, hope I got the picture. Sent his film off. They developed it and it says, wow, this is a pretty iconic picture. And then they grabbed those Marines off the island and Doc Bradley, the corpsman, and they sent him out on a war bond tour because it had a massive impact on people because images are very, very powerful, which goes back to that cover, how powerful that is as far as a draw to your game. That will definitely catch the eye. And like I said before, if I'm walking in a store and I don't know anything about war games or anything, I'm like, I'm buying that game. I don't know what it's about, but I'm buying it because it's cool.
Yeah.
That needs to be a stretch goal. Somehow they need to add that in as a stretch goal, get a poster of that.
Yeah, what's funny is you're not the first person that said that today. It's like, hey, I want a poster of that cover. So
I could see that.
Yeah.
I just like for Itter the fact that you had the only time in World War II where you had German troops and U.S. troops fighting on the same side. And for all the history that I studied, I'd never heard of that before. Please stop. Sorry. I'm getting ready to go lay her down. She's about well done. And
that's what she's saying. She's like, Daddy, please stop. I'm trying to make noise.
You don't have any babies anymore, right? All yours are older now, David?
Yep. Yeah. My baby's 6 now.
Yeah.
He's going to say, you want one?
You guys see what I gave him for his 6th birthday is he got a brand new copy of Heroescape. You guys remember that?
Where did you get that?
I've had it since 2004. It's
okay.
I literally, it's just been sitting in storage, knowing that one day I would need it. And so He got it a week or two ago.
That's a awesome game. I've got a couple of versions of it. Which version did you give him?
It's the original, like the very first box set, the core box set.
Just Heroes. I remember there was like Heroescape and there was Heroescape something. I think it began.
So
with
I think there was a Marvel version, there was a D&D version. There were multiple versions of the base, but this was, I forget the tagline or whatever the subtitle for, but it was the original box set for it.
Well, he'll love it. I loved it. Hell, my wife liked Heroescape, and she's not huge into to board games.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, she's Heroescape just played well. Honestly, they really need to bring that back.
I agree with this. I agree with this one. Matt Chestnut. I'm waiting for Undaunted Guadalcanal.
That's actually a good call. Although I hate to admit this, but I realize now I haven't played Undaunted either. So.
Oh man, yeah, I need to get you a copy.
So that I gotta apologize. I cannot comment on that one.
Did you guys see? Liz Davidson? I love Liz. She's awesome, right? She did an awesome video on her Beyond Solitaire channel where she reviewed Undaunted, and she said, "I'm not doing this very often." Where she's reviewing a 2-player game on her Solitaire channel.
Have I seen her?
Yeah,
I'm sure that. I'm having a brain fart right now. I can't place the face.
Yeah, Dan and I were talking about we're gonna try to get her on the show.
She's awesome. She's one of my favorite people in the world, and I don't know if you guys know her or not, but she's super brilliant. Just an awesome person, interesting person. So
nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I'm having a brain fart. Beyond Solitaire. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've watched several of her videos. Does a great job.
Yeah.
Do give Lucy our best though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Coming from the missus, I still remember when she did the video and was talking about Lucy's counter.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, I love her hair.
Yeah.
She's so pretty.
It's funny. It's funny because you started your channel, Dan started No Enemies Here, and I started designing. It was kind of around the same time. So when I think about all of those things, I think back on with fond memories about that video specifically.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm glad that worked out for you. We had talked about it, and I was trying to help bolster my views.
Yeah.
And I was talking to her, and I'm like, "Well, you're pretty." And I'm not. And it's mainly guys that watch my channel. I mean, you get it. Who would you rather look at? A pretty girl or, my ugly mug? I was like, so kind of a change up on the whole unboxing concept. Have you open it up and kind of take a guess at what you think the game is? Since you're not big into war games, you're not big into history, you'll come up with some goofy stuff. And that's when she was telling DVG, like, oh, you need more sparkles. You need more color.
That was awesome.
I remember that.
That was great. Yeah.
They actually sent her, I don't know if you saw that, a box that had all the planes in it.
Yep.
And they put the glue and the sparkles on it.
Yeah.
She still has that box. She keeps them around on her counter. She loves that stuff.
DVG is awesome. Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, they are. They're fantastic. I think everybody probably knows this, but they're fantastic to work with.
Do you have like a licensing thing with them to bring all your war games to them? I'm not trying to pry, but I'm just curious.
So basically, we don't have anything that's like officially exclusive, but essentially, if I'm going to design a solitaire war game, it's going to be with them.
Since they're pretty much the name when it comes to solitaire board games.
Well, that and plus we just have we've established a fantastic relationship. So they are no kidding. Sarah, if you've ever worked with Sarah, she is seriously the single best person in customer service person in wargaming.
She's awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then Kevin's super easy to work with. He does all of the when I'm done with all the files and stuff, he does all of the painful work of prepping them for the printer. And then Dan's just easy to work with. So I don't know why I would ever go anywhere else. It's the main thing, right? From a purely selfish perspective for me.
I'm not asking about your money. That's your business. But do you just say, hey, I've got this game idea. Here it is.
Yeah, pretty much at this point. They're super supportive of me. And, if they're letting me make games about the topics that I do, right? And they give me full creative liberty.
Well, I got to go here. It's like she's calling me, but I wanted to point out that one of the things that bothers me is that the war game industry doesn't seem to be as friendly to sci-fi, to futuristic, to fiction, anything that's not in like that World War II, Vietnam, literal historical fiction stuff. I'm sorry, she's
killing me. I'm loving it.
She learned how to say "dada" recently, but since I always picked and I joked with her and I growl at her, now she growls. She thinks to say "dada."
That's awesome.
She goes "da da da da," and it sounds weird when it's coming out of that.
Wait till she learns how to say no.
Ooh, yeah.
But have you noticed that you have a harder time getting the fiction, the sci-fi through?
Well, you saw what happened with For What Remains, right? We struggled.
Yeah.
And
so,
you
shouldn't. The concept for that shit was so good. I was like, please don't fail. I want this game so bad. Because I'm sorry, I don't mean to overrule you, but just not like the fluff, ignoring the fluff, but the game mechanics themselves were very solid.
Yeah.
Very solid.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't, I could have taken that game potentially to somebody else, and it could have potentially been like a mini skirmish combat game and kind of obfuscate its war game or ties and stuff, and it would have probably been more successful, I guess. But
or even if you just had it with Sherman tanks and Tigers instead of and squads instead of individual whatever you had representing the unit counters themselves, I think people would have gone for it more. But I really think they were depriving themselves because of their limited focus. Like some people don't want to expand out to anything else, but I like it when I see a sci-fi game or fiction, something different besides just the usual World War II stuff brought to the table. That's why I loved For What Remains so much. It was something different, and it was really good. That I agree with you. That one really bothered me. I thought it should have done so much better than it did, just for the quality of the game itself. And I think people just didn't look at it because of the theme.
Yeah.
Well, look at Valkyrie.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I have a thing for mechs because BattleTech is just probably one of the, if not the richest, one of the richest gaming universes out there with 60 or 80 books in the series and stuff. And then you have Heavy Gear, which was another popular one. Game Cav, which kind of went away and then got brought back. I was actually involved in some of the development of that. And you see Valkyrie and I'm like, wow, this really blends everything, that futuristic mechs and, today's modern armor and stuff like that in a future setting, a near future setting. It's like, that's a win. But for some reason, it just didn't click for people. I guess maybe some of the war gamers saw the miniatures and they says, it's a minis game. The minis looked at it and says, it's a war game. It's like, no, but come on, just give it a look,
Yep.
Hey, don't mean to cut you guys off, but I got to hop off here real quick. David, I wanted to say it was great talking to you. I do hope I see you at WBC.
Yeah.
Get to hang out with you a little bit.
That'd be awesome.
Mo, Dan, great as usual.
Take care.
Sorry, I got to bust out real quick, but you can hear my problems. All right. Just send me a text or remind me.
Will do.
Later, buddy.
All right. See you.
See you.
Yeah, so that's crazy, but we're coming up on, let's see where we are now. We're at 94.41 last time I checked. We're getting closer a little bit. I was hoping we'd hit the halfway point.
Yeah.
But, that probably won't happen until after the show. But wanted to see if we can get to that halfway point just to see, wow, that would be like, what time did it go live? 12?
12 Pacific. Yeah.
12 Pacific. That's what it was. Yeah. So 3 your time, 2 my time.
3 mine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, I want to see if we can get to at least halfway before, before we even hit 12 hours, 8 hours at this point. Yeah. Almost 9 hours. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But no, actually 7 hours, 6.5. Because it's 8:43 here. But did anybody else in the audience have any questions before we let David go when we close out the show? I wanted to give you guys a chance one more time to see if you guys had any questions on the new game that's on Kickstarter now or any of the other games. Dan, did you have any other questions while we wait for the audience to participate?
Actually, I have a question that's completely, it just rolled in my head. Now, David, you a designer. I mean, even Mo, you're a designer. I really enjoy
develop, not design.
That's the harder job.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I enjoy the American Civil War. Okay, it's something I really like, and I know it's like the battles that they had. It's very Napoleonic in the way they maneuvered and all that. Is there any way to do a tactical level game on some battle of the American Civil War? Like, I'm talking about not tactical, huge, 150,000 men. I'm talking about tactical.
It would have to be small unit.
Yeah, like a Pavlov's house.
Like a skirmish, like a skirmish.
Yeah, a skirmish. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that's...
You probably could, and then you can even try bring it back further and have, if you could build up something like that, maybe do it on, if there was, and I honestly don't know that much about this part of the Civil War, if there was any guerrilla type unit, special force type unit.
Yeah, if not, Mosby.
Like Mosby's Rangers, or you can go back even further and go to Rogers Rangers.
Yeah.
You can go, you can, if you can come up with something like that, you can, go further back with that.
I don't know, because I was even talking to Herman Lettman about that, and I don't know. It's like Napoleonics. How can you do a small skirmish Napoleonic? It
would have to be small unit. I mean, look at Sharp's rifles. The movies and the books and all. What makes that popular is not the big, massive battles. It's the fact that you're dealing with the chosen men, a handful of guys that are going into these unique situations. They're part of an overall big battle, but you don't care about the big battle. You care about what these guys are doing. So you'd have to make a game kind of like that. And, it might not be a bad idea to have kind of steal something from Pavlov's house and have like the big battle be, over on another board. And then here's this one unit, this roving unit that's maybe flanking around or going behind enemy lines, disrupting something and kind of blending them together, kind of like Pavlov's house. So we just designed a game right there.
There you go,
Dan.
Good job, Dan.
Well, I mean, Dan did a small thing like that, but it's with a Napoleon, field commander Napoleon. Mm. So he's got the large picture, and then he's got it's not really a skirmish, but it's more of a formation. I don't know how to call it. He's got like a battle board, Mm-hmm. But I want the nitty gritty. Yes, I want that, look at the white of his eyes type thing. Mm, but I don't see it happening. And like someone just said, John Longshore just said, there really wasn't such a thing as a squad unit. Yeah,
there wasn't a squads.
We're going to have a 5-6 man guy go up against, Well,
I'm sure there were. I think it was Mosby's Raiders, not Rangers. I think I'm
more guerrilla type stuff.
Yeah, there had to be guerrilla type, actions taking in these battles, because irregular warfare has been around since the dawn of man. I mean, it's not something new. It's just as people got into the set piece battles, and there was more control for a reason, so that way you can control your units. You're fighting these guys that don't have control for whatever reason. They don't have the training, don't care, or thinking differently. I mean, a great example of that was William Wallace. He thought completely different than the British did, and he split his forces. Things like that. He would do things that they were like rules. Yeah, you don't split your cavalry and your infantry. You need your cavalry to keep their other team's cavalry, not the other team, the other side's cavalry at bay. And he split them up and drew them in, and then backdoored them with the cavalry. That was not normal tactics that everybody used, but it takes innovation like that in warfare to change things. But then again, warfare really doesn't change. It's been the same forever when you look at it.
Innovation or desperation, whatever.
True. A group of engineers blowing up a Union Railroad bridge. There you go. But I think that's it. If no one else has any other questions right now, we're going to let David go. We've kept him almost 2 hours, and I know Dan said he had to go to Betty by about 30 minutes ago, so I got to let him go. He gets his beauty sleep. So, and then John says Confederate version of Bridge Over the River Kwai. So there you go. Dan, get to work.
You got it. Yeah.
But I really appreciate you taking the time, David, to come on the show tonight and talk about the game. And By Stealth NC is on Kickstarter right now. It is nearing the halfway point. So if you have not backed it yet, make sure you jump on there. I'm going to put a link in the chat here for those who have not already gone to it. But jump on that Kickstarter now and get yourself a copy of that. And then there are other DVG games as well, including Pavlov's House that you can get, and some others that you get. Let's see what else is in there. Did you have any other games?
I think they listed all of mine, and then they said the rest of them will be available in the backer kit.
Okay. So when you go in the backer kit after the fact, you can get, Pavlov's House, the neoprene mat, the companion book, Castle Itter, For What Remains. Oh, there you go. There's what Gimpy was talking about, all the For What Remains there. So if you're interested in that, make sure you back the Kickstarter now, and then you can pick up other things either in your pledge now or on the back end in the backer kit. But again, thanks a lot, David, for coming on. Hopefully we'll see you at WBC.
Yeah.
If not, have a good time at Indy.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, guys. See you guys next week. We'll be back with another show next Tuesday night. Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in.